Should we be worried? How worried should we be about China's role in Africa and the Caribbean? Uh, this is a question I have been asked a lot of times. Um, we should be worried. Of course, we should be worried. Chinese people are people. That means they're capable of every virtue and vice that other human beings are capable of. And I think that when I've tried to answer this question, it's a very difficult thing. How do you find the balance between being critical of the Chinese government, critical of the way in which there's debt traps, critical of the way in which you disapprove of certain behaviours and certain deals that are being done, and not feeding into the sort of yellow peril narrative emanating from the West. You may remember a few years ago, David Cameron was like trying to warn Africa about the threat of China. Now, there might be some merit to being those concerns, but David Cameron ain't serious, yeah. And so unfortunately, I think that again, lack of leadership, and leaders, that doesn't let China off the hook, by the way, for any deals that are done that are untoward or exploitative. But it's, again, I think for British African Caribbeans, our long-term strategy should be, how do we organise to use our relatively privileged position in Britain, and I say relatively privileged, I mean compared to brothers and sisters back home, to pressure home governments to act in ways that are more ethical and that serve our cousins and friends and uncles and loved ones back home. But yes, I do think people should be concerned. I also think people have to tread that narrative, tread that issue carefully, because it can be manipulated in a particular way here in the West also. So I don't really. There's some good books on this stuff as well, though. I'll post some of political more. But anyone who's got some good articles or is better informed on that question as well, post some articles in the comment, because that's not my exact area of expertise. How do we start to hold the government to account, Regin? If I had an answer for that one, mate. Woof. I think that, who knows? Who knows? Obviously, I don't believe in the two-party system. I don't believe it can bring about any of the kinds of changes that some of us would like to see. However, organising on a local level, building movements on a local level, building community strength. I think there's a place for non-violent direct action. I believe strongly in that. Intelligent direct action. Political discourse is changing. The funny thing is, depends what you mean, right? Think about how much Britain has changed since we were young. And if you wanted to be black and get on the television, wow, it was a madness. The things you had to do to be on the television. The kind of black characters that were put on the television. You think of Love Thy Neighbour, yeah? And it gives you a real sense of, in some ways, that things have progressed much better. But you got to build, exactly like someone says there, you got to build local power in your community. And then at some point, like I said, when you need direct action, when you need protest movements, when you need community pressure groups and so on and so forth, those are the ways in which you try and hold state power to account. But I do not think that the kinds of reforms many of us would like to see are going to come from within Parliament. It's one of the reasons people always say to me, why are you not going into politics? And I'm like, I don't believe I'm useful in Parliament. I don't believe I can do the kinds of things I would want to do in Parliament. I believe that we're better off out putting pressure on, is what I'd say about that. Is working with the government at all helpful? Yeah. I mean, you can't avoid government. You pay taxes to them. Don't get twisted. I'm not saying local government, council, school, being on boards, etc., so on and so forth. Arts organisations. Those are all branches of government, right? So I'm not saying don't engage with government. I'm just saying let's not be naive about the limits of government and what the electoral system can produce. But of course, I mean, I'm not knocking anyone. If you can go into that system like Bernie Grant did and keep your integrity, more power to you. But very few politicians manage to do so. Bernie's one of the few I can think of that's gone in there and been himself. And so, if you're up for that and that struggle, go on. But it's just not for me. What do I think about voting? I voted for Corbyn, or I voted for a Labour Party under Corbyn. for me, there is not a compelling offer on the table right now, and so it's not personally for me. I'm not knocking anyone else. By all means, vote as a tactic, but it's not my thing. I'm going to address this one as well. This is another straw man that gets. We'll probably just take 3 more questions, right? But I'm going to address this one. Thoughts on single parent black families. This is a straw man that gets used quite a lot as well, and it fools even a lot of black people. So the argument, here's how the argument goes. Violence in black communities is driven either by black on black violence, i.e. genes, black people is bad, or it is driven by single parent families. No one ever makes the argument, funnily enough, that the violence in all of the other nations in the Americas, so let's take Jamaica for example. Jamaica's quite a violent country. Has the same problems as Mexico, has the same problems as Honduras, only Honduras is much more violent than Jamaica, has the same problems as the entire region. And the entire region experienced a massive upsurge in violence in the 70s and the 80s. So did the East End of Glasgow experience an upsurge in violence in the late 70s and early 80s. So did Naples, and loads of other post-industrial places experience an upsurge of violence in the 70s and 80s. What is more convincing? That all of the men of all of those different cultures, regions and countries all decided to abdicate parental responsibility at the exact same time. I don't know, did they have a meeting? Did they translate into Spanish and Portuguese? I'm not sure. And Italian. Or that material history gives us a better understanding of familial dysfunction. What do I mean by that? If you look at the history of the Industrial Revolution in England or any country, you see men from the countryside being sucked into the city. They become landless, they get sucked into the city. Often, let's take my granddad, they're married before they leave the place where they are. So, man, leave Jamaica, leave his wife and kid at home for 5 years, work your backside off, build up some money, send for your wife and kid. People are not monks. In the meantime, you might have another child. None of that is to say that people who are irresponsible or abusive or act messed up as parents shouldn't be critical. It's just interesting that we say single parent black families. And again, none of the people who say this have attempted to demonstrate that there is meaningfully more violence in black communities once we adjust for class. So is there more violence in Hackney than there is in Croxteth or Easterhouse? Is there more drug addiction than there in Hackney than there is in Croxteth or Easterhouse? No. And so what happens really is that, just look in your own families, right? You take a man, good job, decent education, stable income, what we call sedentary employment. Yeah, so if you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an architect, and you look at the marital behavior of that group of men, is it meaningfully different among that group of men when they're black, when they're white, when they're South Asian, and so on and so forth? So a lot of what gets dressed up, anti-blackness is often just dressed up classism. So the black underclass have a specific set of problems which they share with other underclass people for a whole host of reasons, and by which I mean people who have insecure employment, who live in areas of higher crime and higher violence, and so on and so forth. A lot of anti-blackness is dressed up classism, and black people who are poor are presented, and even then caricatured, and then presented as if they were everybody else. And obviously marriage in and of itself, when we say single parent, do we mean cohabiting or do we mean non-married? Because marriage in itself is a property institution. You know, lots of people from poorer backgrounds just don't get married because they can't afford it, on top of all of that. So single parent black families is often just a cliche. If Jamaica, and last thing I'll say on it, in 1962, Jamaica was not a particularly violent country. The murder rate in Jamaica in 1962 was about 3 per 100,000, which is the same as Belgium's is today. The worst years of murder rate in Jamaica in the 70s and 80s and 90s were about 45 per 100,000. It seems very unlikely that men in Jamaica were responsible parents for hundreds of years up until 1962, and then all of a sudden, in the height of the Cold War, in the context of the sectarian, almost civil war in Jamaica, that men suddenly said, I don't care for my kids anymore. It seems much more likely that the semi-civil war that occurred in Jamaica, which is not entirely dissimilar to the semi-civil wars that have occurred in Colombia or Mexico or Guatemala or Honduras and produced very similar results. That material history seems far more convincing than the idea that... Now, I can see everyone saying it's a stupid question, but lots of black people say this too, let's be honest. Thomas Sowell, this is his argument. Without any real material explanation of why I grew up with bare white youths who had dysfunctional families. If you want to talk the thing, bare the Irish youths from Queen's Crescent had stereotypical dysfunctional families where in which there was alcohol abuse and so on and so forth. I could say all sorts of silly stuff about how Irish people are this and Irish people are that. No, they were poor. Rich Irish people are doing fine. And so a lot of this is sometimes just a lack of knowledge of basic material history or just plain anti-blackness. Sometimes people just want to say stuff that's anti-black and dress it up as if it's sensible. Great question. This is a good question. Should we have we lost the war on drugs, and should we legalize all drugs? I don't have a firm position on this because I don't know enough. What people have said to me, who know more, is look at the case of Portugal. They say to me that Portugal legalized drugs, and in Portugal the legalization and decriminalization of drugs has led to massive reduction in violent crime and so on and so forth. I don't know if that's true or not true. I haven't investigated the case in Portugal, but that's what people have told me. As someone just put in the comments, there is no war on drugs. There's a war on poor people. There's a class war, and of course there's a agenda to criminalize poor black people in particular. That is put under the guise of the war on drugs. Because by magic, drugs are always in the ends, and the man ain't got no aeroplanes or no boats. So that's a whole other discussion. But yes, if the evidence that I'm being told about in Portugal is accurate, then I don't see why we wouldn't pursue a decriminalisation and legalisation agenda, seeing as prohibition always leads to violence, as it when alcohol was prohibited. Is it too little, too late right now to accept the NFL Kaepernick apology? Yes, I think the rest of us, should tell them to go F themselves. If Cap wants to play and get his money, let him do his thing. I got no knocking for him. But of course, the NF are being the NF. That was a little Freudian slip right there. The NFL are being disingenuous, Bridget. Yeah, they're jumping on bandwagon jumping, clout chasing, whatever it is everyone calls it these days online. Thoughts on stop and search? Great question. Ethnically targeted stop and search is one of the dumbest policies ever, and the police know it. The last time I was stopped by the police was 3 weeks ago, right? Man's got grey hair, blood. I'm 36 years old. I'm not even the right age group. I keep saying this to people, like, officer, when they pull me over, obviously, this is how it goes, right? They pull me over, they think, random black guy in a nice car, innit? They have a bad attitude. Then, halfway through it, one of the officers recognises me and gets embarrassed. And I'm just saying to them, look, brethren, I'm not even the right age. If I go to join the youth them on gang stuff, they're going to be like, yo, pensioner, what are you doing around here? You man ain't on it. You're an old man, right? So I'm not even the right age group. And that gives you a sense of why ethnically targeted stop and search is so stupid. And even when you start to look at the demographic, I'm not knocking no young brothers. I made mistakes when I was young. I carried a knife when I was young. I did all kind of foolishness at a certain age. This is the key point in this sentence here. At a certain age. And so the police understand that the demographic of young black boys that are likely to be involved in violent crime are from a very particular demographic. Once you control for the care system, so 50% of all the young people in prison in Britain are in care. 50% of all the adults who've ever been to prison were in care. Once you control for being known for social services, once you control for experience of domestic abuse, once you control for expulsion from school, once you control for pre-existing criminal records, you realise there's no black crime problem. Black road youths who are from a certain background, who've had certain troubles, I call youths like me what I call a 50-50 group. Yeah, there are three types of young people. There's the 80% group in any ends, regular working class kids, decent families, they're doing calm. They pose no risk to anyone. Then there's the next 15%. This is what I call, this is my theory, what I call the 50-50 kids. That's those of us who had enough good in our life that we kind of knew we was misbehaving, but enough bad things happened, we had enough problems, that with the wrong push, man got on badness, innit? But with just the right push, you rejoin the 80%. Then there is the last 5% of kids. And in every ends, everyone on this feed right now will know, on your estate or in your ends, there was two absolutely young boys in poor areas in general, but there was 2 or 3 families on your estate who had real problems. Maybe there was a family tragedy there, maybe there was a issue of drug addiction, maybe there was domestic abuse. Some of you Londoners, black Londoners that think London is the baddest city in this country, need to go and see the rest of this country. Yeah, that's what I would say to you. You need to go to Glasgow for a week. You need to go to Manchester for a week. You need to go to Liverpool for a week. You need to go to Newcastle for a week. You need to go to Belfast for a week. And you'll see all of the same problems. And here's the funniest part about it. The racial virtue signaling right-wing press are happy to ignore poor white kids because they don't care about them. They don't care about them one bit. The only time they care about poor white kids is when they think they can use them as a weapon against us. So when they start saying the left behind white working class, the issues in the hood in Liverpool are the same as the issues in the hood in London. The issues in the hood in Belfast are the same as the issues in any hood in London. The issues for poor people there are the same as down here, so on and so forth, right? What they want to do is tell poor whites essentially, you're not a savage. You're not like them black people, yeah? Even if you can see for your own eyeballs violence, drug addiction, poverty, domestic abuse, etc. in poor white neighborhoods, you're not like them. And if you can convince them that somehow you're better than the black people, you can get them to fight against the black people and use them in sort of what the way the government does, plays race against class, yeah? Very clever, very sophisticated way. But the issues are the same. And you've only got to look at gangster rap, right? UK gangster rap, road rap, whatever you want to call it. The moment the man them get some money, they move like every other middle class person. Tell the truth. Some of them are on the feed. All the rappers on the feed, tell the truth. The moment the man them make some money, they live nice. They're like, yo, see that beef and that? It don't look so sweet right now, you know. I'm going skiing next week with the kids. Yeah? My youth goes horse riding. I ain't got kids, but I'm talking about the fact of what happens once the man them start to become successful. So the primary issue is poverty, is relative poverty, domestic abuse, and all the things that go with it. And so stop and search in that context, to get back to the original point, is that the police understand which demographic group it is, but they realise that if they pretend there's a general black problem, I can see all the rappers laughing. I know they be taking their kids skiing, bruv, and horse riding. And all, bruv, I went hot yoga, bruv. That's when you know you're middle class, bruv. Man went to hot yoga. If you'd have told me when I was 19, you're going to go hot yoga and salsa dancing, I'd have been like, nah, I'm not on it. But the point is, right, they apply stop and search broadly, because if they can convince the public and the press that they have 1.2 million unrowdy black people to police, they can justify a massive budget. If they say, well, actually, it's 2,000 kids and really they all grew up in care, so what they need is actually foster homes, what they actually need is more love, what they need is actually early interventions, what they need is more support, what they need is, yeah, role models, but not in this idiot sense that they mean it here. What they need is better schooling. What they need is to not be expelled from school and then put into PRUs. Yeah, if there was more funding for schools to keep, yes, Mega said Bikram's lit. Right, what they need is more funding for schools to keep man in school rather than expel them. Because currently they expel man from school, and all the PR. Fecky's making me laugh. I've lost my point now. I'm putting spinach and avocado in smoothies. Big Fecky is putting spinach and avocado in smoothies. That's exactly my point. Once the man then becomes successful, it turns out, once you've got something to live for, you've got a life to look forward to, your life's good, even with the kids. Think about it. If man are on road, you're in and out of jail, you cannot be the best father you want to be. The moment you've got a bit of money, you can be the best father you want to be. A lot of this is lack of material analysis and man moving and dressing up their lack of material, their anti-blackness in lack of material analysis. So the police want to do general stop and search along not even the right demographic, yeah? And non-intelligence led stop and search, which is how you can end up pulling over a 36-year-old when, like I said, man's a pensioner. I'm not on no badness, bruv. Last two, and then we'll be off because it's 20 past now. And do follow up on my YouTube channel, and you can put more questions there and so on and so forth. Subscribe to man's YouTube channel, innit? youtube.com/Akala Music. Boom, boom, boom. I'm going to try and pick two good final questions. I'm just scrolling through to make sure I use that I have the last two questions are. I'm looking for unusual questions. This is a good question here. Do you think we need to establish our own media to counteract the mainstream media? We've already done that. If you're a UK musician, you'll know that the UK music industry ignored black music for as long as it could. Then SBTV came along, then Grime Daily came along, then Fire in the Booth came along, then Link Up TV came along, and so on and so forth. So people already started establishing their own media because of the short-sightedness of the mainstream music industry. Now we need to take that one step further. We've got music now. We need to start thinking about drama. We need to start thinking about broader content. We need to start thinking about other forms of content within establishing your own media, because then that's the way you get the mainstream media to reform and take what you're doing more seriously, by having your own platform. Yes, man, like Sway, what go on, sir? Yes, bless up. Terry, what go on? Terry Walker, shout on there. This will be the last question. Okay, no, I'm going to make this comment. Did I know my name in Punjabi means a black man? Yes, I did. I didn't know that when I chose it, or I knew. My understanding is, you can tell me. My understanding is it meant a black. Kala means black, but I chose the name because it meant immovable. Then I found out in Filipino it means I thought, and I found out that in Sanskrit it means eternal, and in one language among the Australian Aborigines it means a parrot. So, man's an eternal parrot, Regin. It's a good question about football. I can't read the whole of the question. As football is such a big figure in this country for all races, I can't actually read the rest of that question. I don't know what I'm doing here and why I can't read the rest of the dots on the question. I think I'm just not very good at this. So let me pick another question. Sorry, bruv. Aid, that's a whole long, that's like, I'm trying to find like a, let me see, boom, boom, boom. You know when you're like, it's the final question, so what's the last one? This is a really good question, actually. Is trauma the only thing we're advertising as ethnic minorities? It's a good question to end on, a painful question to end on, and a very valid question to end on. I went to watch a play a few years ago called Misty, yeah? And there was a line in that play that really stuck with me. And big up man like Arinze, yeah? There was a line in that play where the woman in the play is accusing Arinze's character, pardon my French, of writing a nigger play, right? Writing a trauma porn play. And the character says, I want a cycling through a city montage, yeah? Regular black family, like most black families, they want a cycling through a city montage, right? They do normal stuff. I hate to break it to, you know, even the drillers. I say to the drillers all the time, I get onto them, only for fun though. I say to them, yo, like, I say to other people, when black rappers say, them man are not about it, what do you think they mean? They mean that 99% of black boys couldn't kill no one even if they wanted to, because they got parents that will punish them, because they got people that will love them, because they've got expectations on them. That it takes a certain amount of things to go wrong in your life for you to get to that place. Why does this matter here? Because unfortunately, just regular life among black and Asian people, and even to an extent working class white folks, you know, they get much more Jeremy Kyle show than young white youths doing stuff productive, right? So the issues of race and class are often intersecting, but there's a specific issue for black people. Let's not downplay that. There's a specific addiction people have to negative images of black people. And I think that finding the balance between addressing issues that exist and problems that exist, and having a cycling through a city montage, yeah, having just normal black life represented, having normal life represented among ethnic minority groups is a really tough thing to find the balance of. And I do think I try to carefully find the balance of, yo, I don't want to, you know, you don't want to always be on trauma. I don't, like, for example, I went Ghana for New Year's. I had a great time. Do you think black people are sitting around crying like, oh, it's so bad to be black, it's terrible, oh my God, it's awful, it's horrible? No, bro, Ghana was lit at New Year's. It was wonderful. The whole African diaspora was there. I got criticisms of the government and all that sort of stuff. That's a whole other conversation. But when you come to the cookout, we're not sitting around depressed like this is so horrible being black. Nah, man, are having a great time. Grand's over there, boom, 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 so on and so forth. So I do think the trauma porn industry is mostly controlled by white liberals as well, and that's what people think sells, and that's what people think audiences want to see. And so I do think we have to be very careful and very conscious of sharing black joy, blood. That stuff's infectious. It's not all like depression and nonsense. Go to Trinidad Carnival whenever you like go to Sumfest or Rebel Salute in Jamaica. It's magnificent. It's like Glastonbury without the drugs. It's incredible. And so I think that side of what I'm going to call irrational black joy, yeah, that side of it, people need to see more of that stuff. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. We're having a great time. There's just a few people who ruin the party sometimes, and that is what it is, like there is in any group of people. And so I do think that side of the thing needs to be seen more. That's really, really important. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, check this out. I'll post this up on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram stories and IGTV and all that sort of stuff. It's been a pleasure chatting to you lot. Bless up, stay safe. I hope you're all well. Organize, do your thing, create. Big love to you all, yeah? Bless up, safe.